Hello everyone, viewers. Have you ever wondered what happens when a legend dies? Does it simply vanish, turning to dust and forgotten whispers? Or does it go underground, changing its name, its face, its very form, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge? Most history books will tell you the story of the Knights Templar ends in fire and betrayal on a cold Friday morning in Paris, the year 1307. They'll tell you an order of... But what if the history books only told you the cover story? What if the end was just a beginning? What if the ashes of the Knights Templar gave birth to something else, something far more influential, far more enduring and hiding in plain sight? Even today, because the trail of the Templars doesn't end at the stake, it leads to the checkered floors and secret rituals of the world's most famous secret society, the Freemasons. And the story of how they are connected. The year is 1307. The air in Europe is thick with tension. The Knights Templar, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, are at the zenith of their power. For nearly 2 centuries they have been the tip of the spear for the Catholic Church. They are warrior monks, celibate and sworn to poverty, yet their organization is anything but poor. They command a vast network of castles, farms and vineyards. They operate the world's first international banking system, loaning vast sums to kings and popes. They command their own fleet of ships, independent of any kingdom's navy. They answer to no one but the Pope himself. They are, in essence, a state within a state, and that is a dangerous thing to be, especially when the most powerful king in Europe owes you a fortune you could never repay. King Philip IV of France, his wars have emptied his treasury. His kingdom is on the brink of bankruptcy, and everywhere he looks, he sees the shadow of the Templar cross, a constant reminder of his crippling debt and their immense power. He sees their fortresses, stronger than his own. He sees their wealth, which dwarfs his. He sees their influence, which rivals his. Philip is a king who does not tolerate. He, along with his manipulative advisor, Guillaume de Nogaret, hatches a plan so audacious, so ruthless, that it will echo through history for centuries. It is a plan not just to erase a debt, but to erase an entire order from existence and seize their legendary treasure. The trap is set for Friday, the 13th of October, a date that will live in. Before the sun rises, Philip's men strike simultaneously all across France. In a perfectly coordinated military operation, they storm every Templar preceptory, every castle, every farm. Knights who went to sleep as the respected defenders of Christendom are dragged from their beds in chains, accused of being monsters, heretics, and agents of the devil. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, an old warrior in his 60s, is arrested in Paris. He thought he was there to discuss a new crusade with the Pope. Instead, he finds himself in the dungeons of a king he once called a friend. The charges are a grotesque work of fiction, designed to shock and horrify the common person. The Templars, they claim, spit on the cross during their secret initiations. They worship a demonic idol, a mysterious bearded head they call Baphomet. They engage in homosexuality and financial corruption. It is a masterclass in propaganda and disinformation. Under the brutal expertise of royal inquisitors, the unthinkable happens. Confessions are extracted. Knights, broken by unimaginable torture, admit to crimes they never committed. They are stretched on the rack, their feet are roasted over fires, heavy weights are piled on their chests until their bones snap. They confess to anything and everything their tormentors want to hear. The news spreads like wildfire, poisoning the mind of Europe against the Templars. Pope Clement V, a weak man who is essentially a puppet of the French king, is trapped. At first, he is outraged by Philip's actions, by the arrest, but Philip holds the confessions. He threatens the Pope, perhaps even with military action. Reluctantly, shamefully, Pope Clement buckles. He issues a papal bull ordering all Christian monarchs in Europe to arrest the Templars and seize their assets. The machine of destruction is now unstoppable. But in the midst of this chaos, a profound mystery begins to form. When Philip's men storm the Paris Temple, the Templars' headquarters, they expect to find a mountain of gold and silver, the legendary treasure that fueled their entire operation. They find almost nothing. The vaults are nearly empty. The ledgers are gone, the vast accumulated wealth of 2 centuries has vanished, and that is not all. The Templar fleet, docked at the port of La Rochelle, one of the most powerful private navies in the world, has also disappeared. On the eve of the arrests, the ships weighed anchor and sailed into the Atlantic fog, never to be seen again. Where did the treasure go? Where did the fleet sail? Where did the thousands of Templar knights outside of France, the ones who were never arrested, disappear to? This is where the official story ends and the secret history begins. The trials drag on for 7 long years. Many knights recant their forced confessions, choosing a horrific death over a life of lies. They are burned at the stake as relapsed heretics, their screams echoing through the streets of Paris. The final act of this tragedy takes place on the 18th of March, 1314. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and Geoffrey de Charny, another high-ranking Templar, are brought to a small island in the River Seine, in the shadow of Notre Dame Cathedral. They are to be burned alive, but as the flames lick at his feet, the old knight does not beg for mercy. He does not scream, he finds a final reserve of strength, the strength of a man with nothing left. He turns his face towards the royal palace, and his voice, clear and powerful, rings out over the crackling fire. He proclaims the innocence of the order and the lies of their accusers. And then he delivers a curse that will become one of the most famous in history. He summons King Philip and Pope Clement to join him before the judgment of God within a year. The crowd shudders. This is no myth. Pope Clement V dies just 1 month later from a sudden agonizing illness. Before the year is out, King Philip the Fair is killed in a hunting accident, thrown from his horse. Guillaume de Nogaret, the king's chief architect of the plot, also dies a mysterious and sudden death. The curse is fulfilled, the Templar order is officially dead, dissolved by the Pope. The survivors, the knights who escaped the purge, are now fugitives. They are scattered, hunted, and dispossessed. They carry with them not just their lives, but their secrets, their knowledge, and perhaps their treasure. They need a new home, a place where the King of France has no power, a place where the Pope's decree is ignored. They need a kingdom at war with its neighbors, a kingdom in desperate need. They need a place like Scotland. At the dawn of the 14th century, Scotland is a wild and defiant land, locked in a brutal war of independence against England. Its king, Robert the Bruce, is a legendary warrior, but he is also an outcast. He has been excommunicated by the Pope for murdering his rival in a church. For the Templars, an excommunicated king is a perfect ally. A king who doesn't answer to the Pope is a king who won't enforce the Pope's order to arrest them. And so, the story goes. The Templar ships that vanished from La Rochelle set their course for the stormy shores of Scotland. They arrive not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking asylum. They bring with them their military expertise, their knowledge of engineering and architecture, and according to legend, their immense treasure, including, some say, the most sacred relic in all of Christendom, the Holy Grail itself. Robert the Bruce, desperate for any advantage against the might of England, welcomes them with open arms. These are not just any soldiers, they are the special forces of their day. He integrates them into his own army, their identity shrouded in secrecy. Their presence is a hidden ace up his sleeve, and that ace is played at the most critical moment in Scottish history. The Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, the English army, led by King Edward II, vastly outnumbers the Scots. For 2 days, the battle rages, the Scots fight with ferocious courage. But just as the Scottish lines are about to break, a new force appears on the horizon. A mysterious, well-equipped cavalry unit, fighting under a banner that no one recognizes, charges into the flank of the English army. They fight with a discipline and fury that shatters the English morale. The English lines collapse, and the battle turns into a rout. Scotland wins its independence. The chronicles are silent, but the legend is loud and clear. They were the last of the Knights Templar, making their stand, repaying the king who gave them shelter. But survival is not enough. The Templars know they can never rise again under their own name. The brand is poisoned. The cross on their mantle is now a target. They need to disappear completely. They need to embed themselves into the very fabric of, and in the guilds of Scotland they find the perfect camouflage. Think about who the Templars were. They weren't just warriors. They were master builders. They constructed hundreds of castles, fortifications, and churches across Europe. Their architectural and engineering knowledge was unparalleled. They understood geometry, stonework, and logistics on a massive scale. Now imagine these highly organized, secretive men, filled with esoteric knowledge and a need to preserve their traditions, looking at the existing society of Scotland. What do they find? They find the guilds of operative stonemasons. In the Middle Ages, stonemasons were not mere labourers. They were highly skilled artisans, the architects and engineers of their day. They travelled from town to, because their skills were in high demand, they formed lodges or guilds to protect the secrets of their craft. To prevent unskilled workers from taking their jobs, they developed a system of secret passwords, handshakes, and symbols to identify themselves as true members of the craft. A mason from Scotland could travel to France, give the right signs, and be accepted into a lodge there, proving these lodges were brotherhoods with their own rules, their own hierarchy of apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason, and their own rituals for the fugitive Templars. These lodges were the perfect vessel. Here was an existing secret society dedicated to building, with a structure of degrees, a tradition of secrecy, and a network that spanned across countries. It was a glove waiting for a hand. To the Templars, with their superior knowledge of architecture and geometry, the very arts of the stonemason, could have easily integrated themselves into these lodges. More than that, they could have risen to positions of leadership, and once in charge, they could have begun to subtly transform the guilds from the inside out. This is the pivotal moment. This is the birth of what we now call speculative, the tools of the operative stonemason, the square, the compasses, the level, the plumb rule, begin to take on a new symbolic meaning. The square is no longer just for creating right angles in stone, it becomes a symbol for squaring your actions with virtue. The compasses are no longer just for drawing circles. They become a symbol for circumscribing your desires and keeping your passions within. They are building a spiritual temple in the hearts of men, a temple dedicated to the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of a universal Great architect of the universe, who would introduce such abstract, philosophical, and esoteric ideas into a practical trade guild. It couldn't have been simple stonemasons. It had to be men of learning, men with a tradition of mystical and philosophical thought, men exactly like the Knights Templar, whose own order was steeped in the esoteric traditions of the Holy Land, blending Christian mysticism with elements of Gnosticism and Kabbalah. The Templar hierarchy of novice, knight, and commander mapped perfectly onto the Masonic system of apprentice, fellowcraft, and master. The Templar vow of secrecy was reborn in the Masonic oaths. The Templar focus on the Temple of Solomon, their namesake, became the central allegory of all Masonic ritual, the entire legend of Freemasonry, the story of Hiram Abiff, the master architect of Solomon's temple, who is murdered for refusing to give up the secrets of a master mason, is an allegory for the death and persecution of a wise master who holds sacred knowledge. Who is this allegory really about? Is it about or is it about Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master who was murdered for refusing to give up the secrets, and the treasure of the Knights Templar? The parallels are chilling and too numerous to be a coincidence, and if you are finding this hidden history as fascinating as I do, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us dig deeper into these mysteries. Your support is the foundation upon which we build these. If this incredible transformation really happened, it must have left a trace, a fingerprint in stone. And it did. In a small village just outside of Edinburgh, Scotland, stands a chapel that has been called a book in stone. It is one of the most mysterious buildings in the world. It is called Rosslyn Chapel. Built in the mid-1/5th century by William Sinclair, the Earl of Orkney, Rosslyn Chapel, but it is unlike any other church on earth. Its every surface, inside and out, is covered in a riot of intricate, bizarre, and beautiful carvings. And these are not just standard Christian symbols. Here You find Christian iconography right next to pagan symbols, like the green man, a face made of leaves. You find carvings of plants from the New World, like corn and aloe vera. But most importantly, you find a dense concentration of symbols that are directly linked to both the Knights Templar and Freemasonry. There are knights on horseback, engravings that strongly resemble Templar insignia, and symbols that would later become central to Masonic ritual, like the compasses and the square. The Sinclair family themselves have a legendary connection to the Templars. The family law states that they were hereditary Grand Masters of the craft in Scotland. Rosslyn Chapel, many researchers believe, was built as a secret temple, a repository of the knowledge that the Templars brought with them to Scotland. Its architecture is said to be based on the descriptions of Solomon's Temple. One of its most famous features is the apprentice pillar. The story goes that the master mason was afraid to carve the complex pillar. He travelled there, and in his absence, his young apprentice had a dream that showed him how to carve it. The apprentice completed the pillar, and it was a masterpiece. When the master mason returned and saw that his apprentice had surpassed him, he flew into a jealous rage and killed the young man with a blow from his mallet. Does this story sound familiar? A master builder killed by a blow to the head. It is the story of Hiram Abiff, the central legend of Freemasonry, carved in stone a century before Freemasonry as we know it officially existed. Rosslyn Chapel is a riddle, a stone testament to a hidden history. For centuries, rumors have swirled that the lost treasure of the Templars, or even the Holy Grail, is buried in a sealed vault beneath its floor. Ground-penetrating radar has indeed revealed anomalies, a large chamber deep beneath the chapel, but the church authorities have refused all requests for excavation. What secret are they protecting? The evidence doesn't stop with Rosslyn. Let's fast forward a few centuries as Freemasonry emerges from the shadows in Scotland and England and spreads across the world. Look at the higher degrees of Freemasonry. In one of the most popular systems, the York Rite, the absolute pinnacle, the final degree you can achieve, is called the Order of the Knights Templar. Why would a fraternity supposedly descended from medieval stonemasons have its highest degree named after an extinct order of crusading knights? The official Masonic explanation is that it is purely symbolic, an homage to the Templars' piety, but that seems too simple, too convenient. Is it not more likely that this is a direct acknowledgement of their true origins, a secret kept for those who climb to the highest ranks of the Brotherhood? In this degree, the candidate wears the full regalia of a Knights Templar. He takes oaths to defend the Christian faith. The ritual explicitly states that they are perpetuating the ancient order. It's not a symbol, it's a declaration. The ghost of the Templars isn't just haunting the halls of Freemasonry, it is sitting on the throne. The symbols align as well. The skull and crossbones, for instance, we associated with pirates, but it was a potent Templar symbol of resurrection and a key emblem within certain high-degree Masonic rites, a reminder of mortality and the legacy that outlives death. The two-headed eagle, a symbol of supreme power in the Scottish rite of Freemasonry, was also a symbol used by the Templars, representing their dual nature as monk and warrior. The red cross on a white background, the iconic image of the Templars, is repurposed in numerous Masonic degrees. It is a trail of breadcrumbs, a symbolic lineage left for those with eyes to see. The connections are everywhere, woven into the very DNA of Masonic ritual, symbolism, and legend. The story is no longer about a few fugitive knights hiding in Scotland. It is about the deliberate, systematic preservation of an entire worldview, a secret doctrine, hidden within the allegories of a craft guild. So we must ask the ultimate question: what was this great secret that the Templars, what was this treasure that was so valuable it had to be protected for centuries at all costs? The treasure probably wasn't just gold and silver. Philip the Fair captured enough Templar assets to make himself rich. The true treasure was something far more dangerous to the powers of 14th century Europe. It was knowledge. The Templars spent nearly 200 years in the Holy Land, at the crossroads. They were in constant contact with the Byzantine Empire, with Jewish scholars, with Muslim mystics and scientists. They were exposed to Gnosticism, to Kabbalah, to hermetic philosophy, to sacred geometry, and to scientific knowledge that had been lost to Europe during the Dark Ages. They may have unearthed documents from beneath the Temple of Solomon itself, knowledge that challenged the orthodox teachings of the Roman. Perhaps they learned that Jesus was a mortal prophet, not the Son of God. Perhaps they discovered that the true religion was a universal one, and that the God of Christians, Jews, and Muslims was one and the same. This was the ultimate heresy, a knowledge that, if revealed, would shatter the power of the Vatican and the divine right of kings. This was the real reason Philip IV wanted them destroyed. Not for their gold, but the charge of heresy wasn't a complete fabrication. It was a twisted exaggeration of a dangerous truth. The Templars were harboring a secret that could change the world, and when they were destroyed, that secret had to be preserved. It was passed down through the secret lineage, from Templar to Scottish Mason, and then into the lodges of speculative Freemasonry. The goal was no longer to fight a crusade in the Holy Land, a quiet revolution to slowly, subtly steer humanity towards an age of enlightenment, reason, and religious tolerance. The Freemasons, as the inheritors of the Templar legacy, became the secret architects of the modern world. Look at the 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment. It was a Masonic age, the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity, the very Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau. The great thinkers of the Enlightenment were all Freemasons. They met in lodges where a man was judged not by his title or his wealth, but by the content of his character, where a nobleman and a merchant could meet as equals, as brothers. This was a revolutionary concept in a rigidly hierarchical society, and then came the American Revolution. George Washington was a master mason. Benjamin Franklin was a grand master. Paul Revere, John Hancock, a majority of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence and the framers of the Constitution were all members of the craft. Is it a coincidence that the new republic they founded was based on Masonic principles, a separation of church and state, a government of the people? By the people, for the people, a novus ordo seclorum, a new order of the ages, as it says on the Great Seal of the United States, right beneath the all-seeing eye of the great architect. Was this the Templar plan finally coming to fruition? A new temple, a new Jerusalem, not built of stone in the Middle East, but a society built on the principles of liberty and reason in the New World. The secret knowledge, protected for centuries, was finally being used to shape a new civilization free from the tyranny of kings and popes that had destroyed their original order. This is the grand conspiracy, if you want to call it that. Not a plot for world domination in the sinister sense, but a centuries-long project to elevate human consciousness. A plan to finish the work that began in the Temple of Solomon was cut from the ashes of Jacques de Molay's funeral. Pyre rose a phoenix, an invisible empire of the mind that would reshape the destiny of nations. Of course, mainstream historians will dismiss all of this. They will say there is no direct, written proof, no smoking gun document that says the Knights Templar hereby decree that we will now become Freemasons. They will call it circumstantial evidence. A secret society that is truly secret doesn't keep written records of its most clandestine plans. It writes its history in symbols, it hides its legacy in allegory, it builds its monuments in plain sight, like Rosslyn Chapel, daring you to decipher their meaning. The proof is not in a dusty archive, it is in the unbroken chain of ritual. It is in the echo of the Templar ethos in the Masonic lodge room. It is in the uncanny parallels that defy all coincidence. The story of the Freemasons begins with a murder. The murder of Hiram Abiff, the keeper of the Great Secret. The story of the Templars ends with a murder. The murder of Jacques de Molay, the keeper of a great secret. Perhaps they are not two different stories at all. Perhaps they are two chapters of the same book, a book that tells the tale of a brotherhood that lost a holy war for a piece of land, but went on to win a silent war for the soul of humanity. The truth may be that the Knights Templar never really went away. They simply took off their white mantles, put on the lambskin aprons of the Masons, and continued their great work in secret. They are the hidden hand that pushed history forward, the ghosts in the machine of and their ultimate secret, the one they have guarded for 700 years, is this. Empires fall, kings die, religions fade, but the quest to build a better world, a spiritual temple for all of humanity, is a work that is never finished. Alright, that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and give it a like to support us. The story is vast and there are many more